let this year be the year that you land that new job. I am going to be talking about how I took these 5 steps that I think were key contributors to me being able to land 2 job offers for really great companies when the job market was super tough. Watch this video, take these 5 steps, and I guarantee you'll at least feel a little bit more confident. So yeah, without further ado, here are the 5 steps that I took to get a new job. All right, so step number 1 was to write it down. So when I say write it down, it's specific to this one exercise that I'm so glad that I did, and I recommend it to a lot of people, is think about your current role or your current company, whatever, current state. What are those pros and cons? So the pros being things that you would like to do more of, that, make you really happy about your day-to-day. And then what are those cons, things that you're kind of tired of doing, or that you've seen have been things that you disliked about your role or your company or your team, whatever. Write out those things. Super important that you actually put it on pen and paper and not just think it up. Part of that same exercise, what I did was think of all of the past managers that I've ever reported to and did the same review of pros and cons for them as well, because I think it's really important to not just think about the role, but think about the leadership that you're going to be reporting to, because that sometimes can make or break your day-to-day and how you feel about your job. So I did this exercise. I had the pros and cons of my role, the pros and cons of all my past managers, and then I prayed over it. For me personally, I knew that I wanted to take this piece of paper, sit down, have some time with God, and just pray over it. So I did what we call a thank you prayer, and I just thanked God in advance for all these things. I said, thank you for my new job that's going to be X, Y, and Z for my pros, and that's not going to be X, Y, and Z for my cons list. Thank you for my next manager who's going to be X, Y, and Z from all the pros of my past managers, and who's not going to be X, Y, and Z from all the cons of my past managers. I did that prayer one time, put it back in my book, and I left it with God. I said, all right, God, now I'm going to do my part, and I'm going to start applying and leave it up to you. Definitely recommend doing that. So step number 2 is search and apply. Obviously, I personally like to use LinkedIn, and this will be important for kind of the next step that I tell you, but obviously there's a lot of different job boards and things that you can use online. But me personally, I prefer to use LinkedIn to at least search and find which roles I'm interested in. When it comes to my resume, I do slightly tweak my resume for each job that I'm applying to. And I know that that can be daunting, but it's very slight tweaks. So when I see the job description and I see what they have listed out for some of those like key responsibilities, I make sure that obviously I have relevant experience to that. I'm not going to lie on my resume, but I do tweak it slightly to make sure that it's calling out or speaking to some of those key attributes that they're looking for, so that whenever it goes into those little tracking systems, it can, have those keywords in it. Also, another tip is when applying, I personally like to apply directly in the website. Although I'm searching on LinkedIn, instead of doing the quick apply on LinkedIn, because sometimes it'll show like thousands of applicants on LinkedIn, and I'm just like, I'm probably not going to be seen. What I do instead is go to the actual website. One, this helps because there are scammers out there who, forge job descriptions even on LinkedIn. So going to the actual company website, to their careers page of the site, you might have better luck to just kind of cross-check and make sure that the job is actually on there. But I would apply through there, then track it in my job tracker. So this is another resource that I definitely recommend. I have it on my Etsy page that I created. It's basically just a Google spreadsheet, and it has different tabs to allow you to track all of the jobs that you're applying to. And this is really helpful for someone like me. I'm very type A, and I need to track things, check them off. So being able to track which jobs I'm seeing, writing notes for which resume maybe that I used for it, but then especially marking off the dates of when I applied, when maybe I last heard from them, or when I had my last interview, so that it would show me how many days have passed, so I can kind of have realistic expectations on should I hear back, or is this kind of a dead end. And there's also a dashboard tab that will kind of track your progress, show you how many applications you put in, how many have turned into interviews, so on and so forth. So for me, again, that's just helpful to have those visuals and kind of see how I'm going and keep me motivated to keep applying. I also use this same job tracker template or spreadsheet to prepare for my interviews, which that step is coming soon. But before getting there, step number 3 is also what I feel like is another crucial step that really put me a little bit over the edge, is contacting the job poster on LinkedIn. This turned into, I think I heard back from the 4, because I ended up interviewing for about, I think 4 positions, and all 4 of them were in result of after I reached out to the job poster or somebody at that company on LinkedIn. So this is very, very very crucial. So if you find a job on LinkedIn, sometimes it'll have, you know, who the job poster is, sometimes it won't. So if it does have the job poster, even if you don't have LinkedIn Premium, this is what you do. Click on the job poster's LinkedIn and you send an invite, but before sending the invite, there's an option to add a personalized note with the invite. And in this note, this is what you'll say. Hi, I just applied for the blank role on the insert company website. I'd love to discuss the role with you and share the insights I can bring to insert company from my work in budgeting and reporting impacts at my company, whatever, as an example. Sometimes you might not have enough characters, so you can play around with it, minimize it so that you can, you know, actually send it off. But this really helped me in getting responses from people, because, you know, you get LinkedIn invites all the time, but when they actually have a little note with it, sometimes people are gonna look at it. They may or may not respond, but even if they accept your invite, you're then able to follow up and attach your resume. So that was really helpful for me. So then I would follow up and say, you know, hi, thank you so much for your response. Just for your easy reference, attached is my resume for your review. I look forward to speaking with you soon, and kind of leaving it at that, not doing too much, but basically you've already kind of stood out by making yourself known. You got that accepted invite in order for them to message you back, and you personally sent your resume to them. So even if it got knocked out of the system with the automatic reads, you now have it in the palms of essentially maybe the hiring manager. And the worst that can happen is they ignore you and don't say anything back. Just a tip here is make sure you do include that personalized note, or remember to, because if you send off the invite and then you're like, oh crap, I forgot to put the personalized note, and you try to take back the invite, I believe LinkedIn makes you wait like 2 weeks before you can reach out to that same person for an invite. So just keep that in mind, because speaking from experience, it happened to me. Also, another tip is if the job poster is not listed on there, you can still reach out to somebody from that company. So what I would do sometimes is click on the company name from LinkedIn, and then you can search for people. And then I would search names like recruiter or talent acquisition or whatever, and just start firing out the same intro personalized invites to those people, because the worst that can happen is you're reaching out to somebody that's not the lead for that. But then sometimes I would get responses back and say, you know, basically, I'm not a recruiter for this position, but I'll pass it along to that department or to someone I know. They might not do that, but it doesn't hurt to try. Some companies have like referral programs. So it could be that people are like, well, I want to take advantage of our referral program, you know, send your resume to me, I can take a look at it. And if I pass it along, they can benefit from that too. So don't be afraid to use the network. It's not even just your network, but using the LinkedIn network in general, reaching out to people and putting yourself up there. So step number 4, interview. So this has a few different things with it as far as prep and what you should actually do for the interview, but here's some things that I did. So obviously you definitely want to research and prep. Once you hear back from a recruiter to get that initial like screening done, or even before the screening, and you want to make sure that you're prepared, definitely research this company that you're looking to work for. So look up their values, what their mission statements are, just some general history on the company, so that you can be prepared for why do you want to work there, some of those key questions, you know, what made you apply, things like that. It's also helpful to research the person that you will be interviewing with. So again, using LinkedIn, kind of looking at their background. They're obviously going to see that you looked at their LinkedIn, but I don't get intimidated by that. I'm like, okay, whatever. I don't care if you see that I am stalking your LinkedIn. At least you know that I'm doing my due diligence and I'm researching. Because sometimes, depending on how active people are on LinkedIn, they might have posts of, you know, conferences that they spoke at and things like that. So like, for instance, for my job, my director had spoke for some like digital interview. So I watched that interview front and back. I took notes so that when I ended up interviewing with him, I was saying, you know, I did see your interview that you did with X, Y, and Z, and you mentioned so-and-so. I definitely agree with that. I have experience with X, Y, and Z, and just kind of like ran with it there. You know, I did my little thing. And he even said, he was like, clearly you did your research, and basically I would encourage you to continue doing that. So that's a little tip there. Research, and don't be afraid to kind of toot your horn to show that you did research without being creepy. Don't being like, you know, oh, you graduated in 97 from whatever. I wouldn't go that far. And when preparing for the types of questions that you want to answer, definitely use the STAR method. STAR being S, situation, T, task, A, action, and R, result. This method makes it so much easier to not just remember what you were speaking about, but making sure that you're hitting on the most important parts of your story so that you don't end up rambling and then you kind of lose them as far as talking about some of those situational experiences that you have. So an example of this would be, for instance, a question might be, tell me about a time where you had to lead a project from start to finish and you had limited resources. So an example of how I would answer this question, and again, I'm by no means an expert, but this is just giving you an example. So S, the situation. I was put in charge to lead our holiday process from start to finish. This was something that a manager previously did, but we did not have any resources to leverage or documentation of anything that we've done in the past. So T, the task is I needed to create resources for my team to leverage in order for us to stay on track, organized, and be able to execute all on the same page. So A, action. I created the team's timeline and outlined individual action items that needed to be done by specific dates, assigned to team members, and proactively created all of our reporting dashboards needed for the holiday period. R, result. As a result, we were prepared for holiday earlier than the year prior, and we were able to quickly pivot throughout the quarter due to our prior preparation. So that's a simple example just to kind of show you how you can outline answers, write them out so that you can feel prepared to answer any of those like behavioral, tell me a time when types of questions. And for the actual interview, just be yourself. That's so cliche, but that's so true. I mean, I had some interviews where I left completely drained, where I just wanted to cry, and other interviews where I just knew I killed it. So just be yourself, be relaxed, as long as you prepare to the level that you feel comfortable, you know, because sometimes people don't want to over prepare because that makes you more nervous. But just be yourself and know that if they vibe with you and they connect with you, then great. But if they don't, that's still fine. Like, as long as you're yourself, maybe that's just not the fit for you. And lastly, step number 5, this is my absolute favorite one. I know that I keep saying all of these were key contributors, but I think this one is the one that seals the deal. This is the follow-up one-sheeter. So obviously you should always follow up with a thank you note via email or whatever. But I had this idea to kind of create a one-sheeter, almost like a product page that you would do if you're trying to sell a product to someone, but trying to sell myself. So what are those key things when I think about Alexis that I can call out and, you know, give to these people so that if they can't remember anything after they've talked to 50 candidates, they have this one sheeter to refer to who I was and the main things that they need to remember. So this is my one sheeter. This is just kind of the template and the example of it. I have it available on my Etsy, but I would basically attach this in my thank you follow-up. I would do my normal, you know, thank you so much for meeting with me today, recap one key highlight from something that we talked about, but then I would say, also for your reference, attached is a one-sheeter with more information about me. Thank you. And leave it at that, because then it's like a little mysterious and they're like, ooh, what is attached? And then bam, they see this nice little one-sheeter, and I made sure to change the colors so that it matched their brand colors, and then I would include a little part that says prepared for with their brand logo. Those little details showed that I was willing to go above and beyond. I wanted to stand out and I wanted to make sure that I was memorable. So this was it. Basically, the one sheeter just outlines different, you know, key things and sections. You can alter it, change it, whatever makes the most sense for you. Like if you're applying to a job that's very data heavy and you feel like you need to show more visuals of graphs and things like that, you can definitely do that without being overwhelming. But yeah, I like to include like, what is my philosophy? Just little things like that, outlining it in a way that's digestible and, like I said, memorable. But the most important thing, if you can't remember to keep in anything, is this bottom portion that says, you know, basically what they require in the role and what you have that relates to that, because that's essentially what they want to know is, you know, why should they hire you? What do you have that matches what they need? And then just for a little bonus step, because I know that these are going to allow you to get that job offer. After you get the offer, do not be afraid to negotiate. This was something that, like, in the past, I was a little bit like weary about negotiating. But don't be afraid to negotiate, especially because you already wrote down in the beginning what your pros and cons are. In those pros, you should include something with salary pros and cons, and make sure to include that in that exercise and even your prayer if you're doing that, because you kind of already know what you are looking for at that point. But even if you get what you initially wanted, because one thing about my God is he will always one up you, and that's exactly what happened to me, because what I originally put down, I ended up basically getting over 30% more than what I had asked for in that pros and cons exercise that I prayed over. So don't be afraid to negotiate, because you will likely meet in the middle somewhere with that company. And if they're not willing to negotiate, that's kind of a little bit of a red flag as well, because I feel like all companies expect people to negotiate at least a little bit. So definitely don't be afraid to do that, because it doesn't have to just be salary. There's other things that you can try to negotiate as well. So these are the steps that I took. And like I said, I ended up being blessed with getting offered 2 different job offers from, again, 2 different really great companies. But ultimately I decided on the one that I knew was for me from the first interview that I had. But the fact that I even had the option to pick between different ones, knowing what the job market was like and how tough it was for people to find jobs, I just was very, very grateful to be in that position. So like I said, this method may or may not work for you. It worked for me, and I just wanted to pay it forward, because I promised God that I would do this video and pay it forward to other people. Even if it helps one person, then that is fine with me. So good luck in your job search this year. Thank you so much for watching. Give this video a thumbs up. Comment down below if you have any questions. I am not a career coach, although I did do peer career coaching in college. But if you have any questions about anything that I talked about in this video, comment them down below. Subscribe to my channel if you're not already. This is definitely different than my usual content. Normally I'm doing like travel vlogs or some DIY home stuff, but I definitely had to do this. So yeah, turn on your post notifications to be updated every time I upload. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Bye.